Hey, welcome back to our 3-in-1 on our midweek. I'm really hoping that you're sharing this and offering an opportunity for others to look into Unfiltered Jesus. It's a book that we've been studying on Tuesday nights, reading to you and sharing with you on Wednesday nights. And it is about filtering down all the years of history and theology and denominational thoughts on it and looking directly at Scripture, what Jesus says about certain things and particularly about himself tonight. Two things that I think we hear about an awful lot. One is love your neighbor. Two, this time of year, pick up your cross and follow me. What does Jesus say in Scripture? That's where we are tonight. Let's start with loving your neighbor. That comes from a story in Luke, in chapter 10. I'm only going to give you verse 29, but it's a rich man who's trying to justify his actions. And he's asking Jesus, what all do I need to do? I've done all of that. I've done these things. What else can I do? This kind of thing. And Jesus looks at him and just waits for another question. And the man looks at Jesus in verse 29. He says, but he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? He wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? Jesus was talking about loving your neighbor, and the man wanted to kind of narrow it down. So who's my neighbor? Is it the person who lives next door? Is it the person who sits next to me at the desk at work? Is it the person who sits beside me at the traffic light? You know, in other words, the man who was a lawyer wanted to narrow it down to, what's the least I can do to love my neighbor? Well, the author of the book, Unfiltered Jesus, he says this. He says, observing the law requires daily commitment. Loving God and our neighbor gets no time off. I'm not saying it's easy, but that is scriptural truth. That is what is coming directly from the Bible. The author claims that Jesus does not believe Christians are exempt. The lawyer is trying to minimize salvation by asking, who should I love? And when in reality, when we are saved by Jesus Christ, our obligation is to live out love for others. Doesn't always mean we're going to like them. We're certainly not always going to agree with them. All right? Second thing I said was that this time of year was picking up your cross and following others. You know, that's often come across as somebody who's like, yeah, I got to go be crucified with Jesus. No, one crucifixion, we talked about that last week. That's it. One, we don't need to do it. You are not literally picking up a cross. A cross is not your poverty. It's not your wealth. It's not your lack of education. It's not your speech impediment. It's not your wheelchair. It's none of that. You know what the cross is? The cross is that thing that holds you back from being a true follower of Jesus in perfect relationship with him. The lawyer's cross that we just talked about, it was his pride. It was his pride. That's not true for everybody. Not everybody is really prideful. But for him, it was. It meant he had to pick up his cross in his pride. The rich man's cross was his wealth. He was the only person told to go get rid of everything. Said Pastor Bob says in his book, when we talk with him personally about it, the cross is our implement of death to our relationship with God. What is it in your life and mine that's separating us from the perfect relationship we were intended to have through Jesus Christ? Folks, that's the real Scripture. That's what we're working on. That's what Lent's about. That's what every day in the Christian faith is. And I hope you're back next week to tune in again. See ya.